Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching The Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta, and today joining me is Ajoy Ashirwad. He's political editor at The Wire, and Vijaita Singh, who's joining us from The Hindu. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Before we get in, let's just give you a small wrap of what's happened. In the major news that's happened this week is that the 18th Lok Sabha has had its first session. It was, of course, the special session in which the speaker was elected. Om Birla of the BJP has returned as the speaker for the second time. And we have seen that a leader of opposition has been appointed in the form of Rahul Gandhi for the first time in a decade. In the last two Lok Sabhas, there was no leader of opposition because the Congress, which was the largest opposition party, did not have the requisite numbers. But interestingly, what we have seen in this 18 Lok Sabha in the first session is that a resurgent opposition, in a sense, buoyed by its numbers in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, attempting to take on the BJP. And more importantly, we have seen that Manipur has been in the spotlight in this session. Vijaita, I want to bring you in on this. We saw in the Lok Sabha, especially after a very fiery speech by the Manipur MP close to midnight the next day, the opposition wanted the other Manipur MP to speak, but that did not happen. And Prime Minister Modi started speaking, and a concerted effort by the opposition to keep the spotlight on Manipur, and they kept on chanting Manipur, Manipur ko nyay do throughout the 2 hours of Prime Minister Modi's speech. How do you see this? Is this something new that we have seen in the 18 Lok Sabha in comparison to the 17 Lok Sabha?
Yes, definitely. The kind of sloganeering and the united opposition, the way they put up a spirited fight, if we can say that, in the well of the house, and they forced the Prime Minister to speak substantially on the Manipur issue for the first time in Parliament the next day in Rajya Sabha. I would like to add that this was not the first time that the Prime Minister had spoken in Parliament, as being reported by many people, but he had spoken briefly while replying to the no confidence motion last year in Parliament. And this time he expanded on, he gave a detailed speech on the Manipur issue. He did not barely just touch it. And this was also because a day before there was lot of sloganeering, and there was a demand by the opposition that the PM speaks on the issue. And the two MPs from Manipur, they were the ones who were leading the charge in the well of the house at the insistence of the leader of the opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi. So he was the one who asked them to go to the well of the house and, just take charge of the situation. So there were many issues that the opposition was trying to raise, particularly the NEET issue, the irregularities that were conducted in the examinations. But Manipur obviously resonated more, I think, with more number of people, because the way the government has handled it, and it has been lingering on for the past 1 year. So this was one of their weakest links, other than NEET and unemployment. So the opposition went all hammer and tongs on this issue.
Before we get into the contents of Modi's speech on Manipur, because we want to dwell on that also a little bit, Ajay, I want to come to you on this, that of course the opposition has felt a sense of encouragement from the numbers that they have got in the Lok Sabha elections, and there was an effort on their part to have a discussion on NEET and the paper leaks, and we saw Rahul Gandhi writing to the Prime Minister, have a discussion on it, but that did not really transpire. But even during Rahul Gandhi's speech, at least we saw some changes in that 5 cabinet ministers rose to defend the government on policy matters, not just to interrupt his speech, and we saw Modi himself also standing up and defending, putting up an intervention. These are also changes that have been seen in this 18 Lok Sabha that was not seen in the 17 Lok Sabha.
Yes, of course, Sravasti, this is a resurgent opposition, if you can call that. But Rahul Gandhi had not just the Prime Minister, of course, the Prime Minister had to intervene in between, but Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh, and so many senior ministers also got up to intervene in the while Rahul Gandhi was speaking. So that itself was something new in the 18th Lok Sabha. And what For me, what happened is like they are over 230 now as against the NDA's 296. The difference is not too many. Difference is about around 50 MPs. So opposition is in a very good strength. But what this how this last session unfolded for me, I saw that the ideological lines actually kind of, which was very I thought like it was in a state of blur in the last where opposition could not kind of gather itself together on ideological along ideological lines. This time those lines were really sharp, while Modi's speech itself, it's felt and it sounded just the same as like his last few speeches, where he spoke about his commitment to economic reforms and his muscular nationalism or Hindutva, but the opposition showed a determined attitude on how it is ready to counter this kind of BJP's or NDA, if BJP's ideological or Modi's ideological agenda. Opposition MPs, not just Rahul Gandhi, but many from the left, DMK's A. Raja, Manoj Jha of the RJD, Akhilesh Yadav, all pitched in to systematically kind of counter the narrative that BJP has built over the last decade. So while the Socialist Party spoke about elaborately on why a caste census is necessary, they foregrounded the aspects of social justice in a democracy. Similarly, Rahul Gandhi spoke about the necessity and significance of India's plural culture, which has given us this heritage of coexistence, as against what Modi and his brigade always speaks about, always speaks in a language that kind of reeks of Hindu majoritarianism. And at the same time, A. Raja also spoke about different kinds of Dravidian movement. So what I felt that this opposition, this parliament itself, as the Lok Sabha itself, is much more representative of democratic voices that have existed in India for so many number of years, and not just post-independence, but these have remained, these kind of voices. Modern voices were also there, but this pluralistic culture, syncretic culture, aspects of social justice, they have kind of made itself felt in India for centuries. Instead of kind of foregrounding those things, BJP has kind of tried to change history, kind of tried to project that we were under 1,000 years of slave rule and before BJP came to power. So it is not just questioning Modi, but it is questioning everything that Modi stands for. So this is what this Lok Sabha is: much more representative, much more democratic, and very ideological, which in the sense that it feels that this is an opposition and the treasury bench stands for something else, opposition stands for something else. So that is what became really sharper this time.
I think a representation of that was also visible because after we saw the sloganeering in the Lok Sabha, the very next day in the Rajya Sabha, Modi addressed Manipur. Now, this of course took place after the opposition walked out. But interesting that Modi himself decided to speak about it, because as Vijaita was saying earlier, that the last time that he did speak about it was when he was in a sense forced to speak about it during the no confidence motion. And in that also 2-hour long speech, it was barely 10 minutes that he devoted to Manipur. But here he kind of spoke in detail. And just to tell our viewers about the numbers that he has given, he said that continuous efforts are being made by his government, both at the center as well as the BJP government, which is in power in the state. And he said that 11,000 FIRs have been registered and about 500 people have been arrested, and the hopes of peace are possible now. Vijaita, you've of course been closely covering Manipur and the violence that has been going on over there for the last 14 months. How do you see these figures that the Prime Minister has put out? How real are these figures, and how real are his claims that peace is possible right now?
So initially, after the violence in the last 1 year, it's correct that 11,000 FIRs were registered, but there were multiple FIRs for the same incident. There were a lot of zero FIRs. Zero FIRs are filed irrespective of jurisdiction. So after the cleanup and all, that number has come down to 3,000. But the fact is that these zero FIRs were happening because the Kukizo people, living in the hills, they could not go to Imphal Valley and register a case. Similarly, the Methi people could not go to the hills where they had lost their homes and file an FIR. So they were filing these FIRs in their respective areas where they were living. Some filed FIRs even sitting in Assam. So, the cleanup of the records and the sanitization of the records, it brought down the number to 3,000. But 3,000 is also not a small number for such a small state like Manipur. And he spoke about 500 people being arrested, which is correct. Some people have been booked under NSA, some people have been booked under UAPA, some people have been booked by NIA. But all these are police measures. And Manipur is not a law and order issue anymore. Initially, in the first few days, you could have said that it's a law and order issue. It's not. It needs a political solution. Even if you speak to officials there, they say that our job is not to find a political solution for what is happening here. And the crux of the matter is that whatever we may try, whatever we may do, until and unless there is, a radical solution by the government, we cannot bridge this divide between the people. The divide between the people has become stark over the past 1 year, and I see no efforts being made either by the center or the state to bridge that gap. The Kukizo obviously do not want to come to the valley areas. The Metis cannot go there. And there are medical students, there are students, Methi students who were students at Churachandpur, which is in the hills, in the Kukizo area. They cannot go there and study. Vice versa, Kukis cannot come and study in the Imphal. So, this has impacted the lives of the people also. And their properties have been lost. The houses that they built with so much effort and so much money, all that has been destroyed. And even after they left, the state should have ensured that their properties are not touched. But even now we see both in hills and valley that properties are being, the so-called abandoned properties are being destroyed. So nothing has been done on this front, and government had constituted a peace committee last year, which was rejected by both the communities. After that, I don't see any efforts to bring the two communities together. Okay, they meet people separately. The governor will meet some group, the chief minister will meet some group, but there is no concerted effort to bridge that divide that has risen. Mr. Modi spoke about deep-rooted social tensions in Manipur, about its historical presence, but that is not an excuse for this conflict to linger on. And I sincerely think that government should think about bridging this gap between the people.
Also, an important part of his speech on Manipur is, of course, he mentioned all this, that government is doing this and state and center are working together. But he was very quick to point fingers at the Congress as well. And he said that 10 times presidential rule was imposed during the UPA times. And so this is not a new problem. He referred to 1993 when over 100 people were killed. And so he did politicize it, even though he said that we should rise above politics. How do you see that?
Yes, Sravasti. Frankly, Sravasti, I am like really tired of the Prime Minister going back 50 in history, 50 years during Nehru Gandhi's time, and what happened in Manipur around that time, what happened in 1993. This government has been in power for 10 long years now, and there was obvious anti-incumbency sentiment against it, and that is why they got a reduced mandate, and BJP fell short of majority, despite the Prime Minister claiming in the House that BJP itself will get 370 seats. So that is why I keep both the Prime Minister's speeches sounded like a broken record, and it's as if that Prime Minister is just not aware of the changed political scenario in this country, and what he says about Manipur. Of course, Vijaita knows the issue inside out, and I'll not get into facts, but for me, and the way the politics around Manipur has unfolded, it's of course a political crisis but it's also, for any observer, it is also a human tragedy in Manipur. And for a Prime Minister which doesn't kind of hesitate in speaking on almost all subjects, In fact, in his Lok Sabha speech, he also spoke about the Hathras tragedy, and it was very nice of him to kind of talk about all possible assistance to the Hathras victims. But the same Prime Minister who talks and tweets about almost everything, congratulating and expressing his remorse over different tragedies, he hasn't spoken about Manipur, and that's a fact. And the crisis has been lingering on for 14 long months right now without any active intervention by the center. It's as if Manipur has been left abandoned by the center, so that and the center clearly feels that they will resolve it amongst themselves. And while the Manipuris, they don't feel the same, they're still very polarized along communitarian lines, and it is a volatile state right now, as Vijaita was also pointing out, and anytime violence can flare up. To say that the number of violent incidents have significantly lowered doesn't mean that there is no probability of such violent incidents flaring up again. We have seen over the last 14 months how intermittent periods of silence or not peace, I'll not say peace, but generally no violent incident, we suddenly see a flare up, and then each of those incidents kind of amplify into bigger incidents there. So center needs to actively intervene, and more importantly, it needs to kind of project itself as actively intervening it, so that the Manipuris, be it Kukizos or Meiteis, they don't feel abandoned by the center, because they clearly don't have any confidence in the state government. Both the Meiteis and Kukizos, they have been very critical of the state government's action there, and that is what we have been seeing there. So what the Manipur is just a symptom of how this government, Modi government, over the last 10 years have kind of abandoned issues where they feel that they can, by intervening, they can face a possible electoral or electoral defeat, or find themselves in a situation where they can have difficulties in explaining themselves. So while PM Modi keeps talking about his achievements, his political action leaves a lot to be desired for people. And this is not how an active leader, a leader with 56 inch ki chhati and all that, does abandon its own people. He said Manipur is a small state, and what he said is in 1993 mein aisa hua tha, ye hua tha. Where is this government's accountability? Each of those Manipur has been a conflict-ridden state for many years now, but we have seen like almost a long period of peace also there, and suddenly this thing flared up. But each of those political crises in the past, they were born out of immediate political and historical context. This time it was a completely new thing that happened there, with new sentiments, and BJP RSS fellows there, they have a role to play in this latest conflict, where Meiteis are trying to kind of have a ST status, and all these things are something we know. It's not, you cannot compare one conflict with other conflict, that aapne kuch nahi kiya tha and humne to kuch kiya. It's just not merely a law and order situation. It needs a political resolution. I see no effort from the center.
I think this is something that was raised by the Manipur MP Bimol Lokhoijam also during his speech. He was, just to tell our viewers, he was given time close to midnight to speak, when the Lok Sabha was practically empty, and there was and nobody, I mean, among the general population, how many people will be watching Parliament at midnight? But these are some of the points that he also raised, that 60,000 people are still living in relief camps, and there's a sense of abandonment. So do you see that his speech also had some effect, because later it went quite viral on social media? So do you see a result of the Prime Minister addressing Manipur, a result of that in a sense?
Yes, in a way you're right. So Manipur has been desperate for attention. They have been seeking government's attention. And if you see the pattern of attacks and incidents that take place in Manipur, whenever there is some event of national importance happening in Delhi or elsewhere, you will see some kind of flare up in Manipur. And why is this done? I think this is just to catch the attention of the government. Okay, we are also here. I'm not justifying the violence, but this has been the pattern. So the Jiribam violence took place when the new government was being sworn in. The new cabinet was taking oath, etc. So just days before that. And similarly, when the Lok Sabha elections were being held, there was another cycle of violence. So if you look back and if you see the pattern of incidents, this has been the case is Manipur. They are so desperate for attention that maybe some anti-social elements or people with vested interests are flaring up the violence. But this has been the case. And of course, the Congress MP's speech, it struck a chord with a lot of people, not only Manipuris but others also, because they saw the way Northeast is being treated, and the fact that he mentioned in his speech also, it's ironical that I've been given time close to midnight when everybody, like, nobody will be watching this, and even our time zone is different. It's 2 hours. We have been demanding for a different time zone. That is a different thing, although. But yes, his speech and the constant demand by the opposition, they were the likely factors for Mr. Modi to speak on the issue. And the Prime Minister also spoke about officials being sent regularly to Manipur to solve this crisis. So I want to say about this that Manipur cannot be handled by retired bureaucrats anymore. It needs someone who is acceptable by both the communities, who can talk, who can bring both the communities to the same table and talk. Even when Rahul Gandhi met the 2 Congress MPs from Manipur at his office, there was no cookies or representative there. Why has it become so difficult for them to sit together and find a solution? And okay, being an outsider, I can say this sitting here that they should come together. But when you speak to them, they also have their own issues, both the communities. So that cannot be left unaddressed. So what is being done to overcome that? I don't see any efforts. A retired IB official has been made in charge of Manipur. He will also hold meetings on Manipur. He will also hold meetings on Assam. He will also hold meetings on Naga Talk. So what is the priority? We don't have a dedicated person. Okay, Manipur government did appoint a security advisor on the advice of the center. But as I said earlier, it is not a security problem anymore. The communities are divided to such an extent that one community will not like to trust the central forces, the other community will not trust the state police. So where do you find a common ground? So this can only be done by a non-partisan person.
Yeah, this every ground reporter who's been in Manipur, all of them pointed out to the fact that both these communities have appointed even minors as as soldiers with armed guards who protect their villages
This is
against
a very
the other.
disturbing trend.
It's a very disturbing trend, and it's almost like Manipur has no state at all. Like, they are stateless citizens where people have been forced to forced to take matter in their own hands, and even appointing their own children who are minors, 12 years, 13-year-olds, to take up arms and guard their own villages. And this is the state. I'm sure Mr. Modi is aware of that, and this government is aware of that. And to have a response where Congress के ज़माने में ये हुआ था and हमने कुछ नहीं, and even this statement could have come much earlier, but it was only when the opposition forced Mr. Modi to talk about, in his Lok Sabha speech, he did not speak about Manipur. It was only after he was hooted, heckled in Lok Sabha, he was forced to kind of devote a certain paragraph or devote 2 or 3 minutes to Manipur. So it's really sad to have completely this.
A lot of arms that have been looted from police armories are yet to be returned to the state. And where are these arms? These arms are with the people. And there was a period when there has been a rise in number of extortion cases in Manipur, and in number of abduction cases also. Recently, a migrant worker from Jharkhand was killed in the state, and there is no outrage. I mean, I fail to believe, because in Kashmir, if one weapon goes missing, all hell breaks loose. But in Manipur, more than 4,000 weapons have been looted and there is no accountability. We're not talking about it. That speaks a lot about the current situation.
And since we are speaking about accountability, let's also shift our focus. We'll, of course, be keeping our eye on all these developments in Manipur through the course of our reporting. But since we are talking about accountability, let's also talk about the fact in Uttar Pradesh, 121 people have lost their lives after a stampede which was organized by Narayan Sakaar Hari, alias Bhole Baba. Now, it's been almost 4 days since that incident and 6 people have been arrested, yet no action has been taken against this self-styled godman. So why is this self-styled godman not being arrested? What explains this lack of action against this person where so many people have died? And a related question is that this obsession with godmen in our country, that is also something to look at closely in this phenomena.
So this godmen, Sravasti, have been following this phenomenon of deras in Punjab since 2007 now. And I see these spurt in deras which are these ashrams which these godmen run. And they are a collective space. And why is a question, uh, why is the government reluctant to take action against Narayan Hari is I think you can find an answer in what are these cults. These cults, most of these, Omar Rashid, our reporter, also pointed out that despite all the mayhem that happened in Hathras that day, most of the people, even in the hospitals, this Baba's devotees, they were very, very adamant and kind of reluctant to blame the whole incident on the Baba. They said that he's not a human, he's a Paramatma, he's a superhuman, and they blamed the whole thing on administration. But the fact, we know a few facts, that the satsang had to happen in Hathras, and the probable crowd that had to gather was around 80,000. That is what the Chief Secretary of Uttar Pradesh told us. But the relative turnout, as an approximate turnout, was more than 2.5 lakhs. And this happened when the things could not be managed. So now an FIR is there where, excluding Baba, excluding Mr. Narayan Hari or Bhole Baba, all his kind of people who organize that satsang have been named in the FIR. And this, for any political, irrespective of which party the person comes from, why is Adityanath is reluctant to name Baba in? Because these cults, the maximum number of following come from marginalized backgrounds, Dalits, OBCs, really of people from really poor backgrounds. And why there's a sudden, like in the last 20 years, there's a sudden spurt in these kind of cults and deras, ashrams, where people find some kind of relief, where they relieve that these are spaces which are non-discriminatory, whatever its intentions are. Most of these deras start with little bit of good intentions, and they invariably become corrupt once they become popular. But still, the following that it receives, they teach, what do they teach? They teach that you should not be having alcohol. They have de-addiction programs. They teach social justice. They give them a platform. They give them a space where they feel free of what? Free of feudal exploitation that they face in their villages, caste exploitation that they face in their immediate surroundings, and also in the last few 2 decades, where there's so much of growing inequality between the rich and poor, and they constantly feel insecure about the economic injustice they face in their in their immediate surroundings. So and you have a political class which they perceive as self-serving, so there's no space for the poor and the marginalized people to kind of feel free. And these are deras, these are ashrams where they go and they are taught good things. They are treat all their followers are sit together. There's no separate space for the rich, for the upper caste, for the Dalits there. All of them sit together and they feel free. So they find some amount of freedom in these kind of dark times, or their so that is why. And they have huge following for any political person to kind of crack down on the Baba, not just Bhole Baba, but any Baba. You saw what happened with Dera Sacha Sauda chief Ram Rahim, where when he was convicted, the following his followers went on a rampage in Panchkula court and indulged in violence. So because they still feel that this is one person who can relate with our immediate surroundings, our immediate situation. So this is a sociological phenomenon, I feel, and it cannot have any kind of knee-jerk reaction. Of course, the people who are responsible for this Hathras incident, they have to be accountable. A criminal case has to be lodged against them. But this is a problem way more deeper. We cannot way more deeper rooted and rooted in the collective failure of the government, and also the cream of society, which is the upper caste and the rich, to kind of have a society where people who the have-nots feel a little bit of relief or a sense of equality. That is not there in India, and these are deras, ashrams, which provide them this. Of course, I'm talking more about Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, where these kind of ashrams have flourished. There are other kind of ashrams and godmen which have a completely different nature. We know Sri Ravi Shankar, Sadhguru, their target audience is only the rich, and they do mostly very big PR driven campaigns to kind of attract the richer crowd. And we know these small groups everywhere around Delhi also, where extremely rich people who have earned their money, they are seeking spirituality. We know sects in Gujarat like Swami Narayan and many others which have huge following, but their original agenda is to propagate and further the Hindutva agenda. So everyone, but in these kind of North Indian context, many of these places are also places where the poor feel go to seek some kind of relief from their immediate surroundings of exploitation and injustices.
Vijayata, how do you see this deeply layered problem? Is that preventing the government, in a sense, to act strongly? Because as Ajoy was mentioning with Gurmeet Ram Rahim, we saw violence when he was arrested, because he has gone on to get parole way more times than anyone else, perhaps, and has spent more time outside than in jail. But are these issues that are preventing the government from acting, and what can we expect to kind of control this phenomenon? We saw the opposition, Congress's Mallikarjun Kharge, he said there should be a law mandating when such incidents take place, then how many people should gather. So what is the way forward in your opinion?
So it is a larger societal issue. It's not a very crime-prone issue. And sometimes we don't see these phenomenon. We don't really judge these things because, we come from a privileged background. But the people who are going to these sabhas and all, they are seeking some kind of salvation. As he rightly pointed out, that they go there because there is no discrimination. So maybe we are overlooking all this, and government is aware of it, because most of the followers of this particular Baba, they were from the marginalized sections. And until this incident happened, I had never heard about this Baba or even read reports about it. That shows the lack of diversity also in our reporting and the way we report things. So I'm sure the local reporters would have been aware about this, but in Delhi I had never read any report about this guy. So that also is a reflection of our newsrooms, what our newsrooms have become. And I'm sorry to say this, but I'm also part of this ecosystem. But we have to put ourselves in their shoes and understand why they go there. And it's obviously there have been instances in their villages where they have been pushed to the margins. So they seek kind of salvation. And obviously government is not showing any knee-jerk reaction on this because there's also a huge vote bank. And they just had a drubbing in the Lok Sabha elections.
In Delhi also, like every year in Burari, Nirankari, almost 10 lakh people gather there, and it's a huge show there. And like everywhere across Punjab and Haryana, I have found like you this is not just a Hathras problem. In Panchkula also, the police will give you, if you seek permission to have a satsang like that, the police will give you permission to hold a gathering of 1 lakh people. But invariably, I have seen that the gathering is much more than 1 lakh. It was really unfortunate. And why this, like, only when Bhole Baba, after giving his sermon, walked towards his vehicle, a large number of following kind of tried to follow him, to
Take the
touch his
soil,
feet,
take the soil, yeah.
and apply the dust in his feet, in the head. So this is the level. So Sravasti, we are an irrational society. It's not like only these godmen and these devotees are, the phenomenon of deras also has to be looked in the context of this thekedars of larger organized religion like Sikhism, Islam, or Hinduism. All of these religions have been, in the last few years, have been trying to standardize identities. While all these, the Sangh Parivar has been trying to standardize the Hindu, who is a Hindu identity. In the 1930s, we saw how within Sikhism, there was a huge movement to standardize Sikh identity. The Sikh Panthik movement, the repercussions of which are still going on in Punjab. And within Islam also, we see so many different kinds of things where they're trying to kind of define who is the true believer of any religion. And within these spaces, these people who are poor have no role, have no say, have no voice, and they are just asked to follow and change their lifestyles and patterns according to what thekedars of dharam dictate to them. And within these spaces, these deras, ashrams bloom because they offer a free space to them. Yeah, they fill that void. Yeah.
But of course, there's no denying that some measure of crowd control needs to be
there.
needs to be seen and looked into while analyzing all these issues. But just to move away from India for a bit, and before we wrap up very quickly, we want to just bring in the latest news development that has come in today, which is that in UK, a Labour government is going to be formed after almost 14 years, and Rishi Sunak has been voted out, and we're going to see Keir Starmer going to be the next Prime Minister. Now, of course, Starmer's Labour Party has been critical of India's growing illiberalism in many ways, but he would want good relations with India. But Vijaita, just a small comment on the elections in Britain, and how do you see this new government coming in after 14 years?
I just read a report that this UK Parliament will have the largest number of people from Indian heritage. So that is the only only good thing that I noticed. One of the good things that I noticed about this new development in the UK.
And also, in the elections, illegal immigration was a big issue, and Rishi Sunak faced a lot of criticism for his plans of sending back illegal immigrants to Rwanda. Now, Starmer, of course, has promised that he will do away with all such plans. How do you see the developments in the UK today?
Generally, from what I've read, Sravasti, I feel that Starmer is also not radically different from Rishi Sunak. And most of the English observers believe that this is a mandate, this huge mandate for the Labour Party is less of a positive endorsement for Starmer than anger against the incumbent Conservatives. And this is after almost 14 years the Labour Party has won now, but Starmer, generally speaking, but why it is not a positive endorsement, I can just say from a layman's perspective. I was just reading a few reports um, where I saw like very big tall leaders of the Conservative Party lost to independent uh, voices, which were independent candidates which were pro Gaza, and which took a solid pro Palestine stand. And at the same time, Jeremy Corbyn also won with a huge mandate again. But Starmer, on the other hand, doesn't represent these voices. He has publicly said that Israel has the right to withhold drinking water from Gaza, while at the same time rightly pointing out that Russia is an aggressor in Ukraine. So what we see is not very radically. He's also expressed his willingness to work with the French far right party. At the same time, he's also talking with regarding the Indian, is trying to appease the Indian diaspora, Indian Hindu diaspora, by saying that we will denounce Hindu phobia, will celebrate Diwali, Holi, while at the same time showing his Islamophobic tendencies, where he's kind of talking about illegal immigrants among Bangladeshis, and those are places where even Labour Party lost there. And so it was like there's a not just growth of the Labour Party, but also this Reform Party of Nigel Farage, who was like an extremely far right, conservative, nationalist, hyper nationalist guy, who has also grown and will enter the parliament now and talk about things which will weaken the British parliamentary system. So it's still being read by many observers in England, in the UK, and it's still time. How do we kind of read these election results? But what can be seen, that there is some kind of consolidation of kind of centrist politics in England after 14 long years of conservative center-right politics. So that's, I think, a welcome trend in
At least
in
some
UK.
parties 400 par.
Yeah, at least some parties.
Not in India, but in the UK. So we'll keep our eye on all these developments. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wire App, Vijaita and Ajoy. And thank you to our viewers for watching, and I will see you next week.